First, we're going to start this podcast. Is it me? Dude, it's hot here. Is this typical Kansas May weather?
The funny story is, if you ask, so Tactical Games has been to a lot of different places and competed. Texas, some hot places. Texas is hot, okay? Given, you're all from Texas. In 2023, they went to an event, they hosted an event in Kansas. It's about 3 hours away from the middle of nowhere, Kansas, okay? Hands down, you ask anyone who's competed, anyone who's RO'd, even Nick who owns Tac Games, he will always claim it was the worst event for heat. Because it was in the middle of nowhere. There was just no trees, no shade, no nothing. It was like, you're welcome here. You are sun, get sunburned. But yeah, it'll get humid here. I remember, you're from California.
Yep.
So when I moved from California to here, I was like, why is the air sticky here? This is gross. I was like, what is this? Because, California, it's like, you're in the shade. You're golden.
Yeah, a little breeze, and it could be 90 outside, but it feels.
You want to cook an egg? Step on that concrete over there in the sun, and then you cook an egg. But yeah, it's a little different here.
Yeah, it is rough. You guys were right to get to, when we walked in early this morning, you were in here, already got your training session done before it heats up.
Yeah, well, usually they're out here at 4 because we have to train in the heat of the day because we're going to be out actually across.
Oh, gotcha.
We're actually going to be out, and I'm actually going to be in LA.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, next weekend.
It gets toasty down there in June. It's almost June, I guess, when we're recording this. Mm-hmm. But lifting heavy shit. Right?
Odd objects.
And odd objects in heat like this can definitely be taxing. But let's talk about lifting odd objects.
I know I might do most of the talking on this, but I want you to start us off. I don't want you to sit there and be quiet.
Yeah.
What is an odd object to you?
Sandbags, something that's cumbersome and not consistently, I would say not evenly distributed. The weight's not evenly distributed.
Fat
so
bar?
I'm thinking...
Is a fat bar an odd object?
It is, yeah. I would say
it's evenly distributed.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. This is why we brought your expertise.
What about a tire?
Technically, it is evenly distributed.
I know, but is it an odd object?
Yeah, I'd say it's an odd object.
So I think
this is a great conversation because you could look at this as it's not really odd. It's just maybe more unconventional. Would be like a term.
That's a great.
Right?
That's a great term for
versus
it.
an odd object. When I think of that, I think of something that's just literally like a pain in the ass. It's like I have got to work to figure out a way to pick this up, move it, do whatever I have to do with it, and it's not going to be fun.
So we are going to be programming. So to bring this back, we're programming for Pronka, Matt, right? Mm-hmm. And co. So Aaron and I have been working on that. Had been working on that for a while. I was in Bahamas working on that program for Matt, right? And I remember asking him.
I don't remember which part. That is an extensive program, by the way. Yeah. So there was a lot that went into that for you guys.
Essentially a pilot program for our performance track.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I remember now.
Testing it out on Matt. Yeah. So I remember reaching out and asking him, hey, how do you feel about sandbags? Because I usually like to ask people. Some people hate them. Personally, we'll get into it. I freaking think they're phenomenal.
They're awesome.
But I have to always ask, I don't want him to another sandbag workout and then not want it, and he just didn't do it, right? But he loves them. So we put it in that program a lot, if I recall correctly, Aaron. Wasn't it? Yeah. Quite a bit.
Oh, no.
At least one capacity workout a week has an odd object focus.
Could be a sandbag.
It's mainly sandbag, but yeah, some sort of odd object, whatever.
So why I like them from my fitness background, but not necessarily from law enforcement at all background, is I think it fits life better because life does not throw. Getting strong on a barbell is great, phenomenal. That's they're going to get strong. But life doesn't throw a barbell at you with problems. Nope. Life throws things at you that are odd, that are different, that have to require you to pick them up, that are just we always kind of odd object. The first conversation we had, I think an odd object is mainly a sandbag. There's a lot of other things, but mainly we focus on a sandbag.
Right.
So we're going to be doing quite a bit of unconventional movements and conventional movements on a sandbag because I think, at least from my perspective, it's more real world applicable.
Absolutely. Your form's never going to be absolutely perfect like what it can be with a barbell.
Yeah, it has to be almost a little bit different each time. Each time you go to maybe pick that object up off the floor, you have to have a plan, right? And that plan might not always work out. So you might need to adjust your plan. That being obviously more repeating that workout or doing those things will give you a better idea. But every time you drop it, it lands a little differently, right? It's just a little less predictable.
Barbell always lands the same spot.
Yeah, it's a little less predictable. So you have to work through a little bit harder.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of odd objects. You're going to see that a lot in, honestly, all of our programs, to be honest. But I know we're testing out on Pronka right now, guinea pig. I'm looking forward to it. I prefer program them a lot for people, whether it be in the TAC game space or in the CrossFit space. And I'm excited to bring it here because I think it really carries over to real world application for law enforcement.
Yeah, I just got a real quick question on the bags, like on the equipment themselves, because I think when people think of sandbags, they've been maybe introduced to those in a different way.
Okay.
So like we have like more of like the log style sandbag with handles and things
What
like that.
are we working with?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Yeah, okay, so that's a solid question. So most people, you're right, when they think of sandbags, they think of, I call them like handled bags. So they'd be longer, more cylindrical than you think, and they usually have handles on them. I actually hate those bags.
Why?
I hate them for various reasons. Number one, you can't get really heavy with them. And two,
because the handles rip. Or they rip your hands off.
Or the fact
fingers.
that when you pick up that bag, then you tend to treat it as a power clean. You look at the bag and you think this bag has handles, therefore the bag is a barbell. And it's not a barbell because when you pick it off the ground, when you grab a barbell and you pull it into your power position, right? When I have a barbell in my hand, it's in my hand. But when I have a sandbag in my hand, the sandbag sits 3 inches, 6 inches, whatever the handles. Entirely
different.
It's the worst. And so my pull is completely off. So what I prefer is my recommendation is buy any bag, doesn't matter, Rogue, Go, Ruck, Rep, whoever you want to buy it from. Buy a solid sandbag that is usually cylindrical with no handles. So any bag from Rogue is going to be a good purchase, right? So I understand that some weights are not always cylindrical. I know the 150s are pretty square because their height and their width are usually pretty similar. The 100s are usually more squatty potty, and the 200s, 250s, and 300s, right? But my recommendation is get a cylindrical sandbag. I think that's what we pretty much program. We always programmed a lot of cleans, cleans over something, cleans the shoulders.
Yeah.
Sandbag stress carries.
Stress carries are one of my favorite sandbag exercises.
How come? Why?
You light up your post chain.
Yep.
Yeah.
You get core involved. You get your hamstrings, your glutes. Yep. I mean, stress involved with just holding on to it with your forearms. There's so much incorporated.
And with a handled bag, the handled bag usually is so skinny that it's like
flopping over your arms.
It's just closer to your center of gravity.
Whereas where I'd prefer to be like, hey, I have to grab it out. I'm sitting here. I prefer this every day of the week. Vice this.
Yeah, I think so. Like the applicability of this into like law enforcement or like kind of real world, where does this fit in? I mean, I see a lot of people trying to practice like a drag, or that's a very real thing that you might have to do. And again, I don't want to get into the scenario training, but I think people, like if they have to like wrap their hand around it, like I get it, it's hard to do, but why am I doing it? Like why is this important? You kind of covered it a little bit, but maybe just like what's the real world applicability of carrying something like that? I mean, I have my own thoughts on that. I'm curious about you guys.
What do you think, Aaron?
I mean, you're never going to be in a perfect position whenever you're on the job. And so preparing yourself to be at least semi-comfortable in those uncomfortable positions is better preparing you for whenever you're actually out there.
Yeah, we've talked about in previous podcasts of like, don't overly complicate things. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to get you strong on a barbell. I can get you strong on a sandbag, but it's a little more difficult, right? Because it's unconventional. But I'm going to get you strong on a barbell. I'm going to improve your posterior chain on a barbell. Whether it be deadlifts, RDLs, power, whatever the heck we're going to use, okay? But then as soon as I get you strong on a barbell, I want to transfer that over to something that is more applicable. And your question is, well, how is it applicable? Well, I think of like it's an uncommon. I understand we do a lot of sandbags, so sometimes it's more common than normal. But like it's an uncommon movement that could represent more applicable functionality into life.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, you've already covered the equipment. You've covered like why we're putting it in there. Make it a good case for the importance of it. Yeah. Which programs are they going to find this in? Because you mentioned sort of a unique program that we customize for somebody. But where are people going to see that in the IEP program?
I'm pretty sure they're in all 4.
They're in all 4.
Yeah,
perfect.
They're just not as common as they will be in the performance track.
Gotcha.
Yeah, correct.
Gotcha.
My recommendation, last thing to close out, I think, is like, what do I buy? So I have, how do I buy these?
Yeah, like it's like kettlebells. Like, which ones do I get?
Which ones do I get? Which do I buy? Right. Well, the nice part about a sandbag is you don't want to buy too heavy and then have a floppy bag because you didn't fill it in. If you're a male, I usually recommend, depending upon your strength level, like I usually recommend a 150. Start with a 150. And then if you can pick that thing up, usually my recommendation for a lot of people is like, if I told Aaron, hey, pick up that 150-pound sandbag and put that to your shoulder, and then drop it in front of you, can you clean that sandbag to your shoulder 6 times in a minute? That's great. Now it might be time for you to buy a 200-pound bag.
Gotcha.
For a female perspective, I would do the opposite. I would same perspective. I'd say, hey, can you pick up this 100-pound sandbag to your shoulder 6 times in a minute? 100 pounds? Great. You can? Cool. Let's go to 125 is usually the next female up weight because it's a little bit more difficult. But that's usually my recommendation.
Solid recommendation.
Yeah, and you can buy those are, honestly, the most expensive thing is the bag. And then I have a anecdotal story. I have a sand plant down the road from me, 20 minutes away near my range, and they have free sample sand. You can come get once a week.
Oh, nice.
So I will go buy bags and just be out there like for an hour, just digging sand. I'm like, see you guys, taking all the sand. I don't have to pay for sand, but it's super cheap.
Oh,
and if they rip, I know I don't work with any of these companies, but if they rip, I know Go Ruck and Rogue replace them in a heartbeat. As long as you say you don't use them outside, you're golden.
Yeah, so do your odd object training. Look out for sandbag training, specifically in our performance track, but you'll see it in all our programs, that being the strength program, the power and speed program, and the capacity program.
Yep.